You never truly owned her. That truth is painful. It slices through your pride like a quiet blade. She was never yours, not when she held your hand, not when she made promises under a trembling sky, not even when she said she loved you. She was with you, yes. She walked beside you, but she was never yours in the way you desperately wanted her to be. What you mistook for permanence was only presence, and presence, like the wind, moves on. Carl Jung warned us, what remains unconscious in the psyche will govern our lives, and you were governed, ruled by a belief passed down in stories, songs, movies, fairy tales. The belief that if you gave enough, were loyal enough, suffered enough, she would stay. That you could earn love through sacrifice. That you could build a fortress strong enough to contain her desire. But love, especially feminine love, is not a reward. It is not a possession. And desire dances to a rhythm that cannot be controlled. You believed, like so many men before you, that devotion could bind her. That if you gave her your soul, she would give you her eternity. That if you held her in your arms, you could hold her in your life. But what you were really doing was projecting your inner anima, your own unconscious feminine image, onto her. Jung described this clearly. When a man falls in love, he often falls for a mirror of his own inner world, not for the real woman. You didn't see her. You saw your hopes, your fears, your longing for wholeness reflected in her smile. You wanted her to be the answer to a question you hadn't yet asked yourself. You wanted her to save you from your own emptiness, but no one can do that. No one should carry the weight of someone else's meaning. She was never the sanctuary. You thought she was. You built your emotional house on shifting sand. You thought her affection meant commitment. Her presence meant permanence. Her words meant truth that would last. But Jung taught us that the psyche is not static. It is alive, complex, and contradictory. And feminine desire in particular is governed not by logic or justice, but by inner resonance, emotional vibration, and unconscious forces beyond your control. And that is what hurts the most, isn't it? That no matter how noble your love was, how deep your sacrifices, she still changed. Her feelings shifted, her gaze drifted elsewhere, not because you failed, not because she betrayed you, but because her inner world evolved, and you were no longer part of its necessary landscape. You were faithful, consistent, perhaps even perfect in your intentions. But the feminine does not stay where it no longer feels alive. That is the truth. No one tells you. The truth movies bury in happy endings. The truth romantic songs drown in melody. Her loyalty was real while it lasted. Her love was sincere while she felt it. But feelings like tides rise and fall. And when the tide of her desire began to pull away, you were left standing on the shore, clinging to a memory you thought would last forever. You mistook devotion for a contract. You thought love meant ownership. You believed that consistency would override change. But the psyche, as Jung said, demands growth, and growth often looks like loss before it looks like evolution. You thought your loyalty would anchor her in place, but you misunderstood the nature of desire. It cannot be contained. It does not respond to fairness. It doesn't care that you gave her everything. Desire obeys only one law, movement, and now here you are, left with silence, left with confusion, left with the ghost of a woman who once said she'd stay. But this pain is not a curse. It is an invitation to awaken, to stop chasing permanence where there is only flow, to begin the journey inward, the one Jung called individuation, the path of becoming whole within yourself, without needing another to complete you. Because the greatest lie sold to men was not about love, it was about possession. That you could own a woman's heart, that if you were good enough, she'd be yours forever, that her soul could be captured and kept like a prize. But you cannot hold a river in your hands. She stayed while her soul aligned with yours. And when that alignment shifted, she moved, Not to harm you, not to punish you, but because her nature, like yours, is drawn to where it feels most alive. And you cannot demand someone to stay where they no longer grow. This isn't about blame. This isn't about calling her heartless. It's about finally seeing what's real. The man who understands this stops begging life for guarantees. He stops building his identity on the fragile foundation of someone else's desire. Jung said that to confront the shadow is to face the parts of ourselves we refuse to see. And your shadow is this: your need to possess, your fear of being alone, your desperate hunger to be enough for someone else so you don't have to face your own incompleteness. That's the wound. That's the illusion. And that's where your healing begins. You thought losing her was the tragedy, but what you really lost was the lie, and perhaps that's what you needed all along. You thought her desire was something you could win, something you could earn through goodness, persistence, or sacrifice. That once earned, it would remain. That once ignited, it would never fade. But desire is not a reward. It is not a trophy placed in the hands of the most deserving. Desire is a force, ancient and unpredictable, flowing from the depths of the psyche where reason does not rule. Carl Jung saw clearly what most men are too afraid to admit: the emotional world, especially the feminine psyche, is a realm governed not by will, but by instinct, by the tides of unconscious symbols and archetypes. You can neither map it nor control it. And yet, you tried. You believed that if you loved her purely enough, if you showed up fully, if you were loyal beyond all measure, she would stay, but you misunderstood the laws of nature. You mistook emotional resonance for a contract. You thought her promise meant forever, but even Jung warned, what binds us today may dissolve tomorrow, not through malice, but through transformation. The psyche moves, reshapes, evolves, especially when one begins to listen to the deeper voices within. She didn't leave because you failed. She didn't drift away because of something you did or didn't do. Her inner world shifted. The current changed direction. Her soul sought new experiences, new symbols, new terrain. And you were still standing in the same place, holding a memory like a sacred text, while her story had turned the page. This truth is not comfortable. It's not romantic, but it's liberating if you're willing to face it. You were not rejected, you were released. And in that release, you've been given a chance to break free from the illusion that love can be guaranteed. That if you try hard enough, she will always choose you. Because the feminine psyche does not operate on merit. It moves where it feels life. And sometimes that life is in your arms, and sometimes it isn't. You cannot resent her for following that current. You can only reflect on why you built your identity on trying to stop it. She didn't betray you, she evolved. And perhaps your pain is not about her leaving at all. Perhaps your pain is the collapse of a story you told yourself, that love, once earned, remains. That once she saw your worth, she would never turn away. But desire is not interested in worth. It is interested in energy, presence, transformation. Jung would tell you, don't fight the flow, understand it. Ask yourself, why did you need her so much? Why did your soul scream at the thought of her absence? Why did you believe that without her, your story would end? This is your shadow speaking, the part of you that hasn't yet found home inside. Your own soul. You were hoping she would become your center, your anchor, your mirror, but that is too much weight for anyone to carry. And she carried it as long as she could, until her own soul needed room to breathe. You thought loyalty was enough, that the past you shared would be sacred, that because you walked together once, you would walk together always. But Jung wrote that the psyche is not built for stagnation. It demands growth, even if that growth comes through loss. You were clinging to what was, while she was responding to what is. She wasn't cruel. She was honest in her own way. She followed the pull of her inner life. And now you must do the same. The idea that she should have stayed is born from ego, not truth. From a wounded voice that believes sacrifice guarantees safety. But the human heart does not operate under duty. It beats for what makes it come alive. And if you were no longer that place, it is not betrayal. It is just reality. And yet, this is not the end of your story. It is the beginning, because now you are left with yourself. Now you must face the silence. Now you must ask, who am I when I am no longer someone's fantasy? Jung believed that individuation, the journey to becoming whole, begins not in the light, but in the dark. It begins when the projections fall away, when the illusions collapse, when the person we thought would complete us walks away. That is when the soul begins to speak. That is when the ego, humbled and cracked, finally listens. You are not meant to possess love. You are meant to become it. You are not meant to hold another person in place. You are meant to walk beside them, fully aware that at any moment they are free to go and still choose to stay. This is the paradox of true connection. Only when we release the need to keep someone do we truly begin to love them. Only when we find wholeness in ourselves can we invite another to walk with us, not from need, but from freedom. She was never yours, and that's not a failure. It's a reminder that you must first belong to yourself. Because the man who tries to possess desire is always afraid. But the man who understands its nature can walk with it, admire it, even love it, without clinging, without fear, without losing himself in the process. And that man cannot be destroyed by loss, because his wholeness never depended on being chosen. It was forged in the quiet fire of solitude, of honesty, of self-discovery. And that is a power no one can take. It hurts, not just because she left, but because you believed she wouldn't. You trusted in the permanence of something inherently fluid. You thought that if she once saw you as her everything, that vision would last forever. But nothing born of the human heart is fixed. Feelings evolve, people change, and yet you clung to her memory as if it were a truth carved in stone. Carl Jung understood this deeply. The psyche is in constant motion. The unconscious never sleeps. It grows, reshapes, seeks balance. And when our conscious mind clings to what was, it suffers. You are suffering not because she abandoned you, but because your ego expected a different outcome. You wanted the fairy tale. You wanted to believe that love, once formed, would remain untouched by time or transformation. But expectation is a projection, and projections are the enemy of true connection. You didn't love her as she was. You loved her as you needed her to be. She became the vessel into which you poured your hopes, your fears, your vision of a future that would finally make you feel whole. And when she changed, when she stepped out of the role your story had written for her, you called it betrayal. It wasn't betrayal. It was truth. The human psyche cannot endure being frozen. A woman does not stay because she promised once in a moment of fire. She stays if her inner world remains aligned with yours. When that alignment fades, her body may still be near, but her soul is already somewhere else. And if you're honest, you felt it. Long before the words were spoken, before the goodbye was said, something inside you knew. She was already leaving, but you ignored it. You reasoned it away. You believed that love should conquer all, that history should be enough, that she owed you permanence because you gave her devotion. But desire does not operate under obligation. And the more you tried to hold her in place, the more she felt the silent pressure of being someone's emotional anchor when her spirit wanted to drift. Jung taught that the more tightly we grip something, the more we reveal our fear of its loss. And fear is the root of control. You didn't want her love, you wanted certainty, you wanted to feel safe, you wanted to believe that if you loved her enough, she wouldn't leave. But love is not a shield against change. It is an invitation to grow with someone and to let them go when that growth takes them elsewhere. This is the pain of awakening, to realize that she was not yours to begin with, that you built your identity on a presence that was never permanent. And now that she's gone, you're forced to look in the mirror and ask, who am I without her gaze to define me? This is your initiation, not into bitterness, but into consciousness. Jung believed that the loss of an illusion is not a tragedy. It is a necessary rupture, because illusions block growth. They keep us from seeing life as it is. And until we stop chasing the fantasy of eternal belonging, we remain trapped in cycles of dependence, heartbreak, and self-erasure. You have to face the truth. Your peace was never truly yours. It was tied to her smile, her approval, her presence. You gave her the keys to your inner kingdom, hoping she'd never leave. But she wasn't meant to rule that kingdom. You were. This is what the pain is revealing. Not just that she's gone, but that you abandoned yourself long before she did. You made her your center. You thought she would rescue you from your emptiness. But no one can do that. And the man who waits to be saved by love will forever be disappointed by its impermanence. The work now is not to win her back. It is to return to yourself, to face the silence without trying to fill it with distraction, to sit in the ruins of your expectations and begin, piece by piece, to build something real, not a new illusion, not a new fantasy, but a deeper foundation, one built on self-awareness, on acceptance, on the courage to stand alone. Jung said that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and perhaps that's what this moment is for. To show you how much of yourself was buried in the fantasy of her, to help you retrieve the pieces of your identity that you gave away, too quickly, too desperately, in the hope that they'd make her stay. You don't need to hate her. You don't need to shame yourself. What happened between you was human, beautiful, fragile, impermanent. Let it be what it was. A chapter, a reflection, a lesson. She didn't break you. She revealed the parts of you that were already cracked. And now you have the opportunity to rebuild, not in her image, but in your own. Not for her love, but for your wholeness. This is not the end. It is the point of return. Return to self, to sovereignty, to the silent truth that you are enough, even when no one else sees it, that your worth does not disappear when love does, that the soul, once wounded, can still be wise. Because the man who rises from heartbreak without closing his heart is a rare kind of force. He knows the pain of losing love, and the deeper pain of losing himself in pursuit of it. And still, he chooses to feel, to grow, to remain open. That is power. That is maturity. That is what Jung called the integration of the shadow, to face your darkness and become whole with it. And maybe, just maybe, this loss is what will lead you there. You've spent nights asking why. You've replayed the last words, the final silence, the way she drifted further away, even while still beside you. You've begged the universe for an explanation that would make it all make sense. But the truth is, there is no grand betrayal, no conspiracy behind her departure. There is only change. And change, Jung reminds us, is not the enemy. It is the essence of life. The feminine psyche is an expression of nature itself. And nature does not cling. It flows, adapts, seeks expression, thrives in new forms. You cannot punish the river for not remaining in your hands. You cannot blame the seasons for turning. You wanted her to remain fixed, loyal, yours, like a monument to the love you gave. But even monuments erode. The psyche was never made to be held still, especially not hers. You thought strength was holding on. But true strength, Jung would say, lies in letting go, not with bitterness, but with understanding. You do not lose your power by releasing someone. You reclaim it, because the act of letting go is not just about the other person. It is a declaration of self. It says, I do not need to possess in order to love. I do not need to control in order to be whole. You feared that if she left, it would mean you were unworthy, but her departure was never about your worth. It was about her journey. She is not your mirror. She is not your validation. She is her own unfolding mystery, just as you are. When you made her your meaning, you abandoned your own. That is the root of this pain. Not just that she's gone, but that you stopped being enough for yourself. You stopped building your world and started building hers. You stopped living and started waiting for her message, her presence, her love. And now the silence has forced you back into your own kingdom. It feels empty because you've neglected it, but within this emptiness lies your power. Because now, with no one else to carry your identity, you have a chance to become sovereign again, to walk your path without needing an audience, to lead yourself without asking to be chosen. Jung called this individuation, the journey toward becoming a whole, autonomous self, and it begins here, in the aftermath, in the quiet ruins of what you thought was forever. You were not destroyed by her leaving. You were invited to rebuild, but not as the same man, not as the one who clings, who fears, who begs love to stay. You are being asked to rise as the man who loves freely, who gives without conditions, who honors what was, but does not need it to continue in order to feel alive. That man is rare. He cannot be manipulated by affection. He does not beg to be seen. He does not chase validation through romance. He walks alone, not out of pride, but out of clarity. And when he chooses to share his path, it is from abundance, not from lack. That man has encountered his shadow, and instead of denying it, he has integrated it. He knows his fear of abandonment, his longing for union, his ache to be needed, and yet he does not let these forces rule him. He befriends them, he learns from them, he rises above them. You thought losing her would break you, but this is not a breaking. It is a shedding. You are shedding illusions. You are shedding dependency. You are shedding the belief that love must mean possession, that loss must mean failure, that change must mean rejection. Because the love that can be lost was never yours to begin with. It was an experience, a moment, a chapter, and now it has served its purpose. She came to teach you something, to awaken you, to reflect back the parts of yourself you had buried. And now her role is complete. Let that be enough. You don't need to hate her to let her go. You don't need to demonize her in order to move on. That's just another form of attachment. You can love her memory. You can honor what you shared and still walk away clean. Still walk away whole, because the real battle was never between you and her. It was between you and the part of yourself that believed you were incomplete without someone else. Now you know better, and with that knowledge comes a quiet, unshakable strength. A strength not born of resistance, but of surrender, not of dominance, but of alignment. The man who lets go with grace is not weak, he is wise. He has learned that trying to hold what is not his only deepens the wound. He has learned that detachment is not indifference, it is maturity. When you stop resisting reality, you stop suffering unnecessarily. And in that stillness, your true power begins to grow. This is not the story of a man who was left. This is the story of a man who finally returned to himself, who stood at the edge of his heartbreak, looked into the abyss, and instead of jumping, decided to build a bridge that would take him back home. Not to the past, not to her, but to himself. So breathe, stand tall, let the tears fall if they need to, but know that you are not falling apart. You are falling into truth, into awareness, into the man you were always meant to become. You've seen the truth now. Not the comforting truth of storybooks or love songs, but the raw, unfiltered reality of the psyche. She was never yours. Her desire was never a possession. Her loyalty was never promised in stone. Everything you held onto so tightly, her presence, her warmth, her gaze, it all belonged to a moment. And the moment passed. What remains? You. Not the version of you that was desperate to be chosen. Not the man who waited for messages like a starving soul waits for bread. Not the broken shape of a man shattered by her absence. No. What remains is what was always there beneath the illusion. Your soul. Jung believed that the goal of life is not happiness, but meaning. And meaning does not come from comfort. It comes from transformation, from being stripped of everything false until only the essential remains. You have been stripped. Your idea of love, your assumptions about women, your dependence on being needed, all of it has crumbled. And now, in the silence, you are finally meeting yourself. This is not a loss. It is a revelation. You were never meant to find yourself. In her, you were meant to awaken through her. She was the mirror that showed you your wounds. She was the fire that burned away your masks. She was the test you had to fail in order to learn who you really are. Because this pain, this emptiness, this slow unraveling of everything you thought you knew, is the threshold. The moment when the boy you once were dies, and the man you are becoming begins to rise, not a man made of bitterness, not one who sees women as enemies or love as a lie, but a man who has stared into the abyss of his own psyche and refused to look away. A man who knows that love is not possession, that desire is not certainty, that loyalty is a gift, not a guarantee, and, most of all, a man who has learned to walk alone. This is the paradox. Only when you no longer need her to stay can you love her freely. Only when you stop asking love to complete can you offer it without fear. And only when you are willing to be alone can you connect without losing yourself. That man, the man who can stand in solitude and still remain whole, is the most dangerous kind of man. Not because he seeks power over others, but because he cannot be controlled. His heart is open, but it is not desperate. His love is real, but it is not dependent. His soul is deep, but it is not empty. He does not wait to be chosen. He chooses himself every day, without apology. You don't need to chase anymore. You don't need to prove your worth by how long someone stays. You don't need to fear being forgotten. Because the truth is, you are unforgettable when you walk in your own truth. You become magnetic, not by trying, but by being. Not by pleasing, but by embodying. You are not here to be someone's fantasy. You are here to become someone's mirror, reflecting back not their illusions, but their depth. And if they cannot meet you there, you will not shrink to keep them. You will not silence your soul to maintain proximity, because you have learned something most men never do. Love is not about being needed. It is about being known and still being free. You were not rejected. You were rerouted. Her leaving did not break you, it revealed you. And now you have a choice: to return to the old patterns, to seek a new face to project your worth onto, or to rise into stillness, to rise into sovereignty, to rise into the version of yourself who no longer asks, will she stay, but instead declares, I will remain present, remain whole, remain deeply grounded in who you are, with or without applause, with or without affection, with or without her. And now, let me leave you with this. If your peace depends on someone else's presence, it was never peace. It was a truce with your own emptiness. You don't need her to return. You don't need another to replace her. What you need, what you've always needed, is already within you. A soul strong enough to lose everything and still remain sovereign. So walk forward, not to find love, not to prove anything. Walk forward because you finally remembered. You were never made to be owned. You were never born to beg. You were never meant to break for love that cannot hold your truth. Let her go. Let the story go. Let the illusion die, because something far greater is waiting to be born. You